Welcome to Sarah's Side Quest. Today, I finally get around to giving y'all the details of the big winter break trip that we took from December 20th to January 4th. This is also the reason why my content posting slowed way down. It was way more difficult than I anticipated to edit content on the road, and I probably could have struggled through, but I also had the added difficulty of the hard drive on my computer dying. Sometimes you just have to admit defeat. Introduction. Back in September, we asked the boys if they would rather have a big Christmas at home like usual, with several presents each and traditional Christmas dinner, or have a small Christmas with a couple presents, but do a big trip over the winter break from school, and Christmas dinner would be a little more creative. They overwhelmingly said big trip. We spitballed a few different locations, but ultimately decided to visit the Florida Keys since the boys had never been, and Jay and I hadn't been in 15 years or more. So the research and planning began. There was definitely a sense of urgency since it's peak season for Florida, let alone the Keys, and we were rapidly approaching October. Time was ticking. We'd also have to plan other stops along the way to stay around our 350-mile travel day rule, which is actually kind of tricky during the shortest days of the year, and nobody wants to set up in the dark. Since I refused to even drive the truck without the camper, Jay would be doing all the driving. I didn't want to have a bunch of back to back travel days either, since that's really hard on him. Initially, I was trying to fully utilize our free basic Thousand Trails membership that came with our camper, but quickly realized that at a minimum, we'd have to upgrade to get the Trails collection so that we could stay at the reciprocal properties in Florida, because you only get a handful of locations with the base membership. I also had a ton of questions about back to back stays and booking windows and all that stuff. I emailed the rep we were assigned when we purchased the RV, asking all of those questions, and if adding the Trails collection would work or did we need to upgrade to the Journey or Explore memberships. I never heard back. In fact, I didn't get anything besides the standard marketing emails from them until November 29th, which was when our new rep sent us a thing about Black Friday deals. It is now mid January, and we have been assigned a third representative for Thousand Trails. While I was waiting on the response email that never came, I did all the research about Thousand Trails to find the answers to my questions. Long story short, it wasn't going to work out because of the short booking windows, member booking caps, etc. And ultimately, I think we would have ended up spending more on the membership than we actually did for the trip, and I definitely had a lot more control of the locations. To be fair, even if the membership had been more expensive, it is for a year or two, and we could have mitigated the costs over other trips. However, we've stayed at two standard Thousand Trails locations near us, and while one of them is fine at a rate of free, the other one is kind of a complete shit show. I'm not entirely sure we're completely on board with Thousand Trails until they update some things and maybe get their act together a bit more. Anyway, the Thousand Trails bullet possibly dodged. I came up with a pretty sweet itinerary that spans 16 days and 15 nights and clocked in at roughly 2,035 miles of driving with a travel trailer in tow. But first, a quick overview of everything. We're going to end up staying at four separate parks. The first park is Three Rivers State Park, located in Sneads, Florida. We'll be spending 2 nights there, but this is the only one that's going to be split. We're going to spend one night there on the way down and one night there on the way back. After that, we head to Fort DeSoto. It's on the west coast of Florida in Tampa Bay and is a Pinellas County park. We'll be spending 2 nights there. From there, we head all the way down to Marathon in the Keys, where we will be staying at the Jolly Roger RV Resort for 7 nights. After that, it's back up north to Camp Margaritaville in Auburndale, Florida, and we're going to spend 4 nights there. I'm not entirely sure I need to go over all this, but if you want to see the details, feel free to pause it. Day 1, travel day to Three Rivers. Saturday, December 20th, 2025. Friday, December 19th was a half day of school for the younger two. The oldest had already finished finals, so he didn't have to be anywhere, and it was an off Friday for my husband. Despite that, we decided to wait a day and get up super early on Saturday morning and head south from there. During the summer, we could easily leave at lunchtime and easily make the drive to Three River State Park before dark. In December, it's impossible. Not to mention, I-65 would most likely be a parking lot because I'm fairly convinced that whenever there's a break from school, all of North Alabama heads to Disney World. We left home on the 20th just as the sun was coming up to drive the approximately 350 miles to Three River State Park. Since it was so early, the usual pain points of Coleman, Birmingham, and Calera were nearly empty, and we breezed down I-65 and picked up Highway 231 in Montgomery. We stopped for gas once. 10 points for the truck having a massive gas tank and getting twice the gas mileage of the expedition. We stopped at our usual rest area north of Dothan for lunch, and we got to watch some state troopers search a semi truck. And it was way more entertaining than it should have been. We got to Sneads, Florida, where Three Rivers is located, just after 1 p.m. Central Time. It's always really confusing because it's right there where Florida, Georgia, and Alabama come together, and the time zone line is the state line between Florida and Georgia. While technically the town and the state park is in Central Time, half of the people go by Eastern Time because they work in that time zone, which is just across the river. We were there a couple hours before check in, which was 3 p.m. Central, so we went to visit my in laws and it was time to check in because early check in there tends to be more trouble than it's worth. The confusion comes in, even though they've been retired for over a decade now, they still go by Eastern Time, if they've managed to set all the clocks correctly. Cell coverage is almost non existent, and the time on our phones waffles between Eastern and Central Time depending on which tower they've connected to. This particular day, two of us had our phones reading Eastern Time and two of us were reading Central. So we have to have a little mini conference to see what time it actually is at the park so we can go check in. Anyway, we finally got our act together and checked into Site 10 at Three Rivers State Park just after 3 p.m. My husband, oldest, and I set everything up at the site while the younger two and Radar stayed at Grandma's. It's less than 2 miles away, so we headed back over after everything was good to go. We had a nice visit and meal with my husband's family and then headed back to the camper for an early bedtime. Three Rivers State Park Review. During the winter break trip, we stayed a total of 2 nights at Three Rivers State Park, one night on the way down and one on the way back. We actually stay here fairly frequently because it's located in Sneeze, Florida. It's where my husband grew up and his parents still live nearby. In fact, my father in law worked at the park for a decent amount of time many years ago. Three Rivers State Park is roughly 20 miles south of the Alabama state line, where Florida meets the southwest corner of Georgia, and the Chattahoochee and Flint Rivers converge to form Lake Seminole. In addition to camping, visitors can launch from a boat ramp to enjoy some of the best freshwater fishing in the state or fish from a 100-foot pier in the camping area. Other outdoor activities include canoeing, kayaking, sailing, swimming, hiking, biking, picnicking, and wildlife viewing. I personally don't recommend the swimming, but you do you. When driving through the park, always keep an eye out for deer because they're everywhere and at all times of day. At night, you need to watch for other wildlife such as possum and raccoons. There's 30 reservable campsites available. One of them is held open for first come, first serve. There's one cabin available. They have 30 and 50 amp hookups, water hookups. They don't have sewer hookups, but they do have a fairly accessible dump station. Campsites are fairly large, and each also has a table, fire ring, and grill. The maximum vehicle length at this park is 50 feet. Personally, we've stayed at sites 10, 15, and 26 so far. There are several trails to walk and easy access to water. I'm very comfortable in a boat on Lake Seminole, but I don't think I'll be taking the paddle boards out anytime soon because it tends to have a robust alligator population. There are spring fed waterways a short distance away that have far fewer water friends, so I'll probably stick to those. As a side note, on October 10th, 2018, Category 5 Hurricane Michael hit the area, causing a 90% vegetation loss to the park despite being 60 miles inland. Hurricane Michael was the first Category 5 storm to make landfall in the contiguous United States since Hurricane Andrew hit Dade County in South Florida in 1992, which this storm hit my husband's parents and Hurricane Andrew hit my dad, so maybe it's a thing with us. We happened to be in Central Florida for fall break when the storm hit. I remember going to Walmart and completely stuffing the car with supplies and driving it to my in laws. The devastation was incredible. I've yet to see a picture that truly captured the destruction. Nearly 8 years later, you can still see the effects the storm had on Three Rivers. I frequently look at the trees and remember what it used to look like. It'll come back, but it'll be a long time. And I actually had a hard time choosing photos for this because it still doesn't look right to me. There were so many trees down at my in law's place that it was years before we could get to the back part of the property. That's how bad the damage was. I know it was probably even worse at the park. Despite all of this, Three Rivers is still beautiful. You can catch the sunrise with the fog on the water, like in the background photo, or sit on the dock in the late afternoon and listen to the alligators and frogs croaking. Site 10, directly at the end of the pier, is probably my favorite, with Site 15 being excellent as well. Site 15 is over by the rental cabin off to one side, so it's a little more private, but it's kind of hard to back into. Site 10 is really in the center of everything, so it's not as private, but it is a pull through space and the view just cannot be beat. I'm not a fan of Site 26, but it's acceptable if you don't have a better choice. It does sit lower than all the other sites around it, so it absolutely floods when it rains. I will grab Site 10 every single time it's available, though. See the graphic and the pictures on screen to get a good feel of the site locations that I managed to get pictures of. Really, all of the ones along the water are lovely. Check in is at 3 p.m. Central or 4 p.m. Eastern. Pay attention to your time zones, especially if you're coming in from the east. Your cell phone may not be reliable because you can pick up towers in both time zones here. Park is in Central Time. You can call the park to arrange early or late check in, but I've never done it personally, so I can't say what kind of experience it is. Check in is simple, but it does take a bit of getting used to. This is not a large or high volume park, and it is staffed accordingly. There's almost always somebody manning the gatehouse from 3 to 4 p.m. The rest of the time, it's kind of random. If there's someone at the gatehouse, they'll be very helpful, tell you all the things you need to know, and it's pretty much like every other Florida state park. If the gate is open but nobody's there, you can proceed into the park towards the campground. There are two locations in Google Maps that are super useful here. The first is the main entrance, which comes up when you enter Three Rivers State Park. The other is Three Rivers State Park Campground. The campground is fairly direct, but it's nearly 2 miles from the gate. You just go through the gate and go straight for just under a mile. Then turn left at the sign for the campground. There's a house on the hill if you need a landmark. Continue for just under another mile and you've reached the campground. It's circular and the roads are not one way, so anything goes. The sites will be clearly marked on a post. I think they're all on the right side of the sites, but I'm not positive about that. Find your site and get set up. The camp hosts will come find you shortly and get you checked in. If they don't, they're fairly easy to find. They'll either be at their marked site or you'll see them in their golf cart. They're fairly active. They will happily answer any questions you have and sell you firewood. They'll probably step by and check on you a couple times on the first day just to make sure everything is good. Three Rivers is fairly out of the way, and it's usually not too difficult to snag a spot. However, I still would recommend that you reserve your spot ahead of time. Although it's not as competitive as some other Florida state parks, I have booked a week or so out and only had 3 sites to choose from. And the last time we stayed there, they had a sign on the entrance stating that the campground was at capacity that night and no drive ups would be accepted. Overall, Three Rivers is a great Florida state park, and I highly recommend it. If you enjoy the state park vibe over the RV resort vibe, you'll be happy here. And because of its ease of use and simplicity, it's one of my favorite places to camp in our RV. Day 2, Travel Day, Three Rivers to Fort DeSoto, Sunday, December 21st, 2025. My husband and I were up before daylight again, and the boys shortly after. After packing everything up and hitting the dump station, we got on the road just after 9 a.m. Eastern, which I'll be in Eastern time for the majority of this trip. It's about 360 miles, the majority of it interstate, to our next stop at Fort DeSoto, just south of Tampa. I 10 was a breeze that early on a Saturday, and we were southbound on I 75 a little while later. We decided to stop off for lunch and gas in Ocala since we're fairly familiar with the area. We decided to go to a truck stop that happened to have a Wendy's. The whole situation was a complete dumpster fire. We now use the truckers' lanes in the back for diesel and diesel exhaust fluid or DEF. It looked like a couple of the other open lanes had the DEF pumps covered, so we pulled up behind another RVer who was just finishing up. He then decides to go into the little store thing and buy groceries for the week or something. He's gone forever. Jay and I keep going back and forth about whether we need to back up or not and go to another pump, but certainly he'll be right back. More than 10 minutes later, he finally emerges from the building with who I'm assuming is his wife. They finally move and we pull up to the pump where this pump is also out of DEF. Our youngest is whining that he has to pee, and we tell him just to let us get some fuel and then we'll pull into the parking lanes and we'll open up the camper so he can go. Words cannot describe how much better and easier it is to take this kid potty in our camper rather than going into a public bathroom with him. Trust me on this. The truck has been screaming at us for the last hour because it's down to 50% DEF, which is super annoying because it's not exactly an emergency at this point. It continues to do so while we wait our turn. Also, Radar needs to walk. While Jay manages all the shenanigans with the truck, my oldest walks Radar and I order Wendy's from the app because we're all hangry and making sandwiches sounds like hell. Also, I've had an allergy attack overnight and woke up with nearly no voice and a solid wheeze. Does this happen every time we visit my in laws? Yes. Does it mitigate things if I take a Zyrtec? Also, yes. Did I remember to do any of that? Absolutely not. When we get food for the whole family, I always order on the apps because it's so much easier managing everyone's orders. App ordering has been life changing. I despise counter service. Not to mention that most of the fast food places really incentivize app ordering. When traveling, I also always order from the parking lot because it's not like I know the addresses of these places. If the app doesn't do it automatically, there's usually a thing to select the nearest location. I need to express here that I have done this exact same routine several times a month for several years now at many different eating establishments. And yes, that's foreshadowing. Jay and our oldest walk over to the main area of the truck stop where the Wendy's is, while I have Radar and the younger two in the camper. We have the doors and the window shut because idling trucks are loud and we're all special. I eventually realized they've been gone a really long time. I can't text because I gave them my phone in case there was something goofy with the order pickup. They finally come back mad. They waited for over 20 minutes when they were finally told that this location does not accept online orders any longer. It probably went to another Wendy's at Love's truck stop down the interstate. While Jay made sandwiches, I tried calling the other location. Nobody answered. I called customer service. They don't work on Sundays. I try using their chatbot, and it tells you you're third in line, counts down to the next available agent, and then makes you wait 10 minutes. And when it then tells you nobody is available. I ended up doing this 4 other times over the course of the day, so I know exactly how it's programmed. After the first attempt at that, though, I tried calling the other location again where they did answer this time. Now, mind you, that I sound like I've been smoking for 60 years and I'm on my deathbed, but I still have on what's known as my customer service personality in full effect. I explain the situation and the worker gets me her manager. I explain again, and after completely misunderstanding what I'm telling her, she finally gets it and tells me my food has been sitting there the whole time and I can come pick it up. Lady, it's been over an hour. Wendy's food hot is a stomach bomb. I certainly don't want it cold. I'm 10 miles up the interstate, which translates to more than 20 minutes travel time, according to Google. We are pulling a 30-foot travel trailer. We still have several hours of driving that needs to happen before dark. I am not coming to get this food. I ask if I can have my $54 refunded. They can either throw the food out or give it to someone that wants it. I don't care. She yells at me and tells me she can't do that and to call corporate, who is closed because it's Sunday. It's also 4 days before Christmas and they are not in a hurry. There's been a lot of back and forth with Wendy's. I got referred to the franchise owner, who was lovely and offered to refund my money, but I had to come into the store in person. When I explained that I was over 400 miles away at that time, he said to contact corporate. Corporate has been absolutely useless. They might have a good social media game. They do not have a good customer service game. It's been over 4 weeks as of filming this. I sent them an email so that it was in writing with my case number on January 14th, stating that if this isn't fixed by the end of the week, I will be initiating a chargeback with my credit card company. I still haven't heard anything back, and I initiated that chargeback 3 days ago. This has been one of many recent not so great experiences with Wendy's lately. I have no problem never eating there again. They even have a great location that I frequent often while I charge my car after my middle kid's doctor's appointment. We will definitely never stop at that particular stop again. But back on topic. The travel part of the rest of the day was uneventful, even though three of us had just seen Shucked the previous Thursday and kept making Tampa jokes and singing the Tampa song as well as repeating the character Peanuts jokes. I'm not going to put any of it up here because I don't particularly want a copyright strike, but if you know, you know. We made it to Fort DeSoto Campground about an hour before dark and got settled despite some small check in drama and breaking one of the marker lights against a tree while backing into the tight campsite because our oldest kid thought it was cleared. It was not. No worries, we redneck fixed it with orange duct tape and ordered a new one after the trip. We walked around the campground after dark that night and it was absolutely delightful. Day 3, Fort DeSoto, Monday, December 22nd, 2025. I started the day taking a solo scooter ride through a large portion of the park, while Jay and the oldest kid went to Walmart for the aforementioned duct tape and a few other supplies. You can see the video of my ride through Fort DeSoto that I took that morning. It will also be linked in case you missed it. It's a little bit different than my normal content, and there's absolutely no yapping if you're already sick of my voice. It's a little off brand for me, but I'm super glad I posted it because YouTube is definitely punishing me for not posting as frequently as I was before the trip. Anyway, after we all got back to the campsite, we decided to explore the fort and the beaches. We couldn't take Radar to either of those places, so we came back for a late lunch and then took him to the dog beach in the dog park, where he met some big dog friends who had a frisbee, which was very exciting. He also met two other corgis, which he typically enjoys. We talked with their owners for a few minutes while he actively avoided touching the ocean. The last time he'd been to the beach in St. George Island, he'd made the poor decision to try to drink the ocean and was not a fan, and now he has beach trust issues. This is the point where I need to tell you that we exchanged our Christmas presents with each other before we left for the trip. The only Christmas presents that were with us were for family members that we were seeing on this trip and the Santa presents for the kids. My youngest A had gotten an action camera because he'd filmed a significant portion of our fall break trip on my cell phone. It would give him something that was his, and I wouldn't have to worry about him accidentally dropping my phone in the water or something. And that's also foreshadowing. He was super excited and did a ton of filming while we toured the fort and explored the beaches. Around 9 p.m., I realized I hadn't seen the camera since before lunch. Cue the panic. Fort DeSoto Campground Review. Fort DeSoto Park is a Pinellas County park located in Tampa Bay, Florida. Its address is 3500 Pinellas Byway South, Tierra Verde, Florida, 33715. Fort DeSoto Park Campground has 238 campsites and is located on an island in a 1,136-acre park in the Tampa Bay area. All campsites have water and electric hookups, 30 and 50 amp, and are located very close to the water. Each site also has a table and fire ring with a grate. The campground is divided into 3 areas. Area 1. Sites 1 through 85 are designated for those camping in tents, Class B vans, a pop up camper, or trailer under 16 feet in length. RVs and pets are not allowed. Area 2 is designated as able to accommodate all camping units, but I seriously question this. The campground has a decently low tree canopy and the roads are very narrow. We had problems backing our almost 30-foot travel trailer into our spot. I can't fathom trying to get something over 13 feet high and longer than 40 feet in there. I saw several larger rigs having a lot of difficulty maneuvering through Area 2 while we were there. I did a ride through the campground and filmed the fronts of all the sites to show this, but for the life of me, I cannot find the footage. This was in the middle of some camera drama as well as the hard drive on my laptop dying, so my best guess is that it's either somewhere not intuitive or it accidentally got deleted. I do have the other video that's playing in the window on the left side of the screen. That's the full ride through of the campground, all three sections. I found some footage of Area 2 that I had filmed before going out to do the longer ride through Fort DeSoto itself. So I'll start playing it here now so that you can get a feel for how narrow the road is, how low the canopy is, and if there's someone in front of you, you're going to wait a minute. Since Area 2 is designated as the only area that's pet friendly, we were in that section because of radar. We had Site 116, which was technically canal front. It was actually very lovely and somewhat private, even though it's next to two trails that lead to the bathhouse, laundry, dog walking area, and playground. And boy, do they mean it as the only area to take pets. There are signs everywhere outside of that area and the check in area saying not to proceed if you're walking your dog. Speaking of dogs, they mean it when they tell you you have to have their official rabies vaccination papers. Raider has a metal rabies tag that has his rabies number, the county and state he's registered in, and an expiration sticker on the back. And I had taken it with me to check in. This is his official license. It was not acceptable. I had to dig through my email to find the photo of the certificate that I just happened to take last March, as well as the receipt from the vet where I paid for the vaccination. I get why it's important since Fort DeSoto is known to have a huge raccoon population, but I found it to be excessive since I had his physical license in my hand. Despite that, the staff at both the campground and the larger park were nice and very helpful whenever we needed assistance. I don't really get the point of it being so pet unfriendly. My best guess is that areas 1 and 3 have actual beach adjacent to them, where area 2 is all seawall, which would normally make sense until you realize that Fort DeSoto Park has a designated dog beach in the park. Why not designate the campground area beach as pet friendly and then open up the other two sections? It would actually make the campground easier to book since Area 2 seems to be mostly full, while areas 1 and 3 are fairly sparse. Another thing to note is that you do have to pay tolls to get onto the island. There are routes to take where you pay fewer tolls, but it's unavoidable. You cannot even get to a store without coming back through the toll gate. Normally, it's not a big deal since we have a sun pass, but we'd accidentally left it in our other car at home. I don't know if it actually works since I haven't gotten a bill yet, but they supposedly have pay by plate now, but you'll pay an increased fee. Only one toll plaza was manned where we did pay cash. I don't think we will ever forget our sun pass again, though, because the toll situation caused so much anxiety for us. Regardless, the campground at Fort DeSoto was definitely the best site we had during the trip. It was the most private and had the best view, even though we had Site 10 at Three Rivers on the way down, and that's a close second. As I mentioned, we had a view of the canal, and we'd been told that occasionally manatees come hang out there during the winter, but it was fairly warm while we were there, and we did not see any. We would like to visit the Fort DeSoto campground again, spending more time there and getting the chance to actually get out on the water and do some more things around Tampa Bay, most specifically the Manatee Viewing Center at the Tampa Electric Company. Day 4, travel day from Fort DeSoto to Jolly Roger RV Resort. Tuesday, December 23rd, 2025. Tuesday, the 23rd began with Jay and I again up before the sun. We had done the bulk of the cleaning and packing up the night before, but there are still things to be done before we can hit the road to drive the approximately 340 miles. And today promised to be a long day. We had our coffees and did our morning routines before we woke the boys. The Fort DeSoto Park gates opened at 7 a.m., which was just before the official sunrise of 7:18 a.m. I think we went through the gates at 7:02 officially. We had retraced A and the family steps during our outing the previous day. To make a very long story short, the camera was gone. There was a chance that the camera was still sitting on a table at one of the pavilions. We encountered a park ranger who really did her best to help us find it. She radioed everybody she could think of and took down my contact information in case it got turned in. I still had some hope because it was still registered to my account with the active serial number. Actually, it's still registered to my account today, but it's not terribly helpful. After much searching, we went back to the campground where the boys were finishing up getting ready and eating breakfast. The oldest, S, had started breaking down the remaining stuff outside. We told the boys we'd struck out, and I started working on stowing everything for travel inside the camper. After we were ready, Jay took the rig and the boys over to the dump station while I went to the campground office and left my information there, just in case. A was devastated, but ultimately he'd been careless. He really wanted to replace it, and this kid has saved nearly every dollar he's ever gotten. He really wanted to have the camera for the keys. Problem is that that particular camera had been sold out online and locally to us for a couple weeks at this point. We were planning on taking I-75 down towards Fort Myers before taking either 75 or Highway 41 east across the state, picking up Chrome Avenue just outside of Miami. I actually grew up there, and my dad has lived there since the 80s, so I knew better than trying to take the Turnpike extension, and passing through Homestead and Florida City before we dropped down to US 1. I searched every Best Buy, Target, Walmart, you name it, online along that route. My only shot was finding something before leaving Florida City. After that, there are few, if any, box stores. It just so happened that a Target in Fort Myers, just off the interstate, had two of the cameras in stock, and we'd get there around lunchtime. The plan was to stop at the Target, park somewhere off to the side, have lunch, and get a camera. Let me tell you, this was a nice area. It just might be the bougiest Target I have ever seen. We found a row of spaces way off to the side of the plaza to park the truck and RV. Jay stayed with the little two to make sandwiches, while the middle kid walked radar. S and I went to Target on the biggest side quest of the week. We got the camera, paid with A's green light card, and rejoined the family for lunch. Crisis averted. The rest of the day was fairly uneventful. We ended up taking US 41 across the state because it was roughly the same time estimate as I 75, and the scenery is better, in my opinion. Along the route, I told the kids stories of some of the adventures I'd had in Everglades National Park and on the Miccosukee Reservation when I was a teenager. We eventually made it over to Chrome Avenue and down to Homestead in Florida City. We had finally made it to US 1, A1A, the Overseas Highway, and most importantly, the Jimmy Buffett Memorial Highway. We arrived at Jolly Roger RV Resort between 4:30 and 5 p.m. Check-in was a breeze. The setup, not so much. Jolly Roger RV Resort review. Jolly Roger RV Resort is an 11-acre family-owned park with 160 plus full hookup sites. All large RV spaces have 30 and 50 amp electrical service. Check-in is at 1 p.m. and check-out is 12 p.m. They have four categories of sites: interior, interior plus, premium, and seawall. They also have a few efficiency rooms available in the building next to the pool. The laundry and bathhouse are also in this building. They offer very reasonable rates on daily, weekly, or monthly stays, especially when you consider the amazing location. A few of the many amenities are free Wi Fi, which we ended up not using, rentable boat slips, heated swimming pool, dog park, laundry facilities, a very nice sandy recreation area, and daily site trash pickup. We ended up not using it because we couldn't get our act together before 9 a.m., but the walk to the dumpster was easy. Booking. I was absolutely stunned at the amount of RV resorts and campgrounds in general, but especially in the Keys that do not have online booking. I realize it's personal preference, but if I have to call to make a reservation, I'm not staying there. I heard so many good things about Jolly Roger in different places, but especially online. And Jolly Roger does have a solid social media presence. So, all that being said, why is the only place to book online on their Facebook page? It's not on their main webpage or their Google listing. Even considering that the booking process online was a little clunky, but no worse than usual. You can't reserve a specific spot, but you can make requests in the comments. I did make a request for a particular zone, but I completely understand why we weren't put over there, so it's all good. The nice lady at check in did notice that it was an online booking and asked how that was, and I said it was fine, I was happy with it, etc. She said it was new and they were still testing it out. I wish I'd thought to tell her that we wouldn't have stayed there otherwise because I think it's important. But I was too busy imagining all the situations in my head about how things could have gone so wrong. You know, like my reservation getting lost and things like that. But everything was 100% fine, and I had pulled up my online reservation several times before we left to verify things, and everything was all good. Arrival, check in, setup, and following the rules. We were running a touch later than we'd initially planned, but we were going to arrive somewhere around 4:30. I got a phone call from Jolly Roger at 4:03 with them checking on us and making sure that we were all good and how long did we think it would be before we got there. I told them that according to the GPS, we would be there in 16 minutes. The woman on the phone laughed and she was very nice and told us she would see us when we got there. When we arrived, everything was ready to go and check in was very quick. She handed me my packet of information, asked about my online booking experience, and went over a few rules, including the statement try to stay about a foot from the pad. It's tight here and we're pretty booked. Okay, great. Seems like a reasonable statement considering I haven't seen the sites yet, and that the standard for just about everything in South Florida is crowded with little space, especially during snowbird season. We pulled up to our unexpected pull through site, and despite the roads being fairly tight and the lots fairly narrow, it was bigger than expected because there were two nice trees in the middle and the roots were prominent, so it was a bit more wide to accommodate. Every campsite we've been to basically has you get as close to the power pedestal as you're comfortable with, and your space ends at the next pedestal, which would be about perfect when we put the stairs down. They would be about a foot from the concrete pad, so I directed Jay accordingly. Doing this also kept us well away from the trees so we didn't hit them while pulling in. Also, of note was a power pole a couple of feet away from the trees. Nobody wanted to hit that either. There was an employee on a golf cart, and I noticed she was basically circling the roads in front and back of us, kind of like a shark. I immediately got paranoid because that's how I roll. About her third trip around, and about the time I got Jay about perfect in the sight, she stops and tells us that it's tires 1 foot from the pad. She wasn't mean or anything, just direct. And I respect that. To be fair, it does say on one of the papers in the packet that this is the rule. But at this point, I have not had time to read all the things in the packet. We were just trying to get parked. So I go tell Jay the situation and he tries to correct it. But we're already pretty much parked, and no matter what we do, we cannot get this thing lined up correctly. And now the neighbors have come out to ask if we need help parking our tiny 30-foot camper in a freaking pull through spot. So both Jay and I both immediately die of embarrassment. Please send flowers. Here's where I'm a little salty about things. When you follow the rules with the tires as opposed to the steps, you're basically shoved up against this concrete pad and your stairs are taking a significant amount of real estate. There's also a fairly large picnic table on site. You can move the table into the grass, but we have those trees and the roots make it nearly impossible to walk over. You're definitely not putting a table over those roots. And you can't go past your concrete pad to the side because the other side of your concrete pad is just about even with the next person's pedestal, and that's bad manners. We're just wasting about 6 feet of space that we would have had we just stayed where I had us originally. But it does explain why the seasonal lady on our pedestal side had her awning stakes past our pedestal. She was awesome, by the way. We were absolutely crammed onto this small concrete pad since we had the truck parked directly behind the camper. It was like musical chairs constantly with the five of us. We had to move the picnic table several times a day, depending on if we were eating or working or whatever. We did end up talking to the people on the other side, and they were fine with us putting our chairs past their pedestal on the back side of their site so we had a bit more room. But I still wasn't a fan of the situation. But rules are rules, and I'm nothing if not a rule follower, and Jay is even worse. The part that really irritates me, though, is that it really seems like this rule was not enforced for anybody else. So many other folks had done what we had originally done, and apparently nobody said anything because that's how they were the whole time we were there. Actually, that was the theme for most of the rules, especially ones regarding dogs in the beach area, tiki hut, and pool. It would have been awesome to sit in a lounge chair and watch the sunset with radar, but it's no pets over there. Shame that others can't follow the rules, though. We would have definitely spent more time in the public areas if we could have taken radar. If he can see us from the RV when we leave him, he barks, and that's a non starter. And I do understand why pets in the sand might not be great, but I just want consistency. Also, there's very little grass in the Keys since most of the land is basically coral. You see complaints about this constantly in all kinds of campground reviews. While I do mention it somewhat in this review, I don't think I'd go out of my way to knock a park for not having grass because that's just the geography. I will go hard if there are no trees or vegetation, though. Jolly Roger is on Grassy Key, which is part of the city of Marathon, and I have to say, Grassy Key is appropriately named. Jolly Roger actually has grass at their campsites, so I completely get the no rugs on the grass and things like that. It's a pretty big deal. So I feel like all the other rules made complete sense and were reasonable. That's probably my biggest criticism of Jolly Roger. I understand all the other rules, but I don't understand the reasoning behind having your wheels 1 foot from the pad. And then you add the uneven enforcement of the rules, and it just breaks my brain. Either enforce the rules or don't, not both. Sites. The property is beautiful. It is well maintained, and based on what I could see of other RV places, it is far superior as far as aesthetics. The neon lighting throughout the park is very pleasant and not at all overdone. The staff had decorated the property for the holidays as well, and it was very pretty. A Sun Outdoors property adjoins Jolly Roger to the south, and it looked like an RV parking lot from both the road and the water. No shade, all concrete. I'm sure it's lovely, but it's just not my vibe. Of course, I couldn't see the entirety of the properties and certainly only saw a fraction of them, but all the way down the Keys from the road, most campgrounds seem to adhere to the RV parking lot formula. And I'm sure that the state parks are awesome, but good luck getting a spot in one of those. We had an interior plus site, so I'll start with that. These sites are in several different areas of the property and are marked in orange on the map. They come in both back in and pull through sites. I had hoped to get one of the back end sites along the side with the dog park, but after seeing them in person, I think our almost 30-foot camper may have been a little too long for those spaces. We got a pull through site a good bit back from the water, but I'm not complaining. Our site had grass and shade, and there wasn't an excessive amount of people or car traffic. It was convenient to the pool, office, laundry, and restrooms if we needed them, and it wasn't too far from the dog park. The walk to the waterfront area was easy. It looks way further than it actually is when you look on the map. The interior sites are marked purple. I'm pretty sure they're all back in sites. The ones that are along the road seem to be long term residents and staff, and the ones backing up to those seem to be almost exclusively short term stays. The interior spaces that were in the middle and along the dog park side seem to have varying turnover rates, and the people seemed happy. The people who had pop up campers and tents were all placed along the dog park side. The premium sites are marked in blue on the map. If you have a larger rig like a toy hauler or a fifth wheel, you almost have to be in one of those spaces. The majority of them are pull through, but there are several back end spots down the side where the other resort is located. These sites have a larger concrete pad, are much longer, and I think they all have those fancy composite picnic tables. We would probably get one of those sites if we came back. The seawall or waterfront spaces are marked in yellow. Don't get me wrong, they're excellent spaces, but personally, I'm not sure I'd get one of those. Our neighbor, who was a returning guest, said the noise and foot traffic get to be a lot, but the worst part of it is the salt just plasters your rig, and that gets to be a problem long term. A short term stay would probably be best in those spots. And since everyone walks past those spots to get to the beach area, the tiki hut, and the water, there's not a lot of privacy. The sites are paved and have a composite picnic table as well. Other thoughts. The staff here are helpful and friendly. Whenever we had a question or needed a recommendation, they did their best to help. The office is nice and clean, and the small store has a good selection of items. I'm actually mad at myself for not going back and getting a t shirt. The location was great. Jolly Roger is very well located as a one stop place. We were about an hour from Key West and about 30 minutes from Isla Mirada, so it was easy to go just about anywhere we wanted. It was 10 to 15 minutes from a decent grocery store, but there's a marina store within walking distance if you need something in a pinch. Just be aware that you'll spend about 3 times as much as Publix. Georgie's Coffee is on the north side of the resort. Good coffee and excellent pastries. Be sure to get there early because they do a heck of a business, and when they sell out of your favorite goodies, they're out for the day. The guava croissant was my favorite, but the kids liked the Nutella and key lime beignets, which were about the size of dessert plates. Jolly Roger is very walkable. We walked radar several times a day, and we walked the trash to the dumpster nearly daily. The dog park is well maintained and easy to get to. You can walk or drive your kayak or paddleboards over to the launch pretty easily. I wish we'd been a little closer because I really started struggling when carrying my board back and I was tired, but the trade off there is that we had less traffic and more privacy. The pool and pool area were nice. The kids went swimming several times. It was very crowded at times, but that's to be expected. The swimming area off the seawall was easy to get to and access, but honestly, it was easier to get in the water from the boat ramp and then walk over to the swimming area, which probably is bad if the launch is busy. I didn't use the restrooms or shower areas, but the boys did, and they said they were good. The laundry room was actually kind of beautiful. Big, well maintained looking machines and very clean. Be advised that it's $4 a load and they only take quarters. I knew this ahead of time but forgot to bring a roll of quarters. $4 is 16 quarters, and that's a lot. We ended up not doing laundry there because of it. We knew our next place had laundry as well and was app or tap to pay, so we didn't sweat it or try to obtain quarters. But by the time we left Jolly Roger, we had 10 days of laundry for 5 people, and it was a significant amount of laundry. There were a few activities that you could find out about through their app or from a sandwich board sign by the Tiki Hut. The ones I saw were all for older adults, no specific kids activities, which is fine because although there were a fair amount of kids there, that's not exactly the key demographic. And I can't get my kids to participate anyway, much to my frustration. We were able to snorkel around the pier and went paddleboarding several times. We even spent a couple evenings watching the sunset with our toes in the sand. Like I said before, I really prefer the sites at Jolly Roger to most of the other places I saw. They had everything there from tents, pop up campers, and vans to massive fifth wheel toy haulers and similarly sized Class A luxury rigs. Everyone seemed to get placed just fine. We were actually between a very expensive Class A and a good sized Airstream. Across from us were rentals from RV America and some other travel trailers. Everyone seemed to fit in well, the rigs and the people. Sometimes when you go to a campground in Florida with your kids, you feel like you're not welcome or you're intruding. This was not the case at all at Jolly Roger. It was a wide sampling of people and everyone just vibed. Just wonderful. Overall, I would definitely stay at Jolly Roger again. I loved the sights, the rates were more than reasonable, and the amenities and location were excellent. The place definitely grew on me, and the kids kept asking to go back, so I'm calling it a win. Day 5, Christmas Eve. The Marathon Fire Department goes all out for Christmas. Wednesday, December 24th, 2025. We'd been traveling for 5 days, driven approximately 1,050 miles, and moved 3 times. My allergy attack from the weekend had developed into a nice case of bronchitis, as it's prone to do, so I was hitting the inhaler and the Dayquil pretty hard at this point. Jay was exhausted from driving, and S was not feeling great either. We needed a day off. We spent Christmas Eve hanging out around the campsite. The younger two kids played video games between trips to the pool. S had rigged our hammock up between the ladder mount on the RV and the back of the truck and had fallen asleep in there. Jay hung out with me when he wasn't watching the kids at the pool. I yapped with our neighbors intermittently while I edited the Fort DeSoto video while sitting at the picnic table. At some point, we got out the paddle boards and got them set up for whenever we decided to go out on the water. Jolly Roger had posted on social media earlier in December that they would be a stop on Santa's Caravan. It's basically a highly mobile Christmas parade that makes multiple stops over 15 miles or so. Some stops are actual stops and others are just drive-bys. It's put on by the City of Marathon and specifically the Marathon Fire Department. I had looked it up online and we were the first stop. The whole route takes roughly 3.5 hours, so Santa would come visit us around 6 p.m. They were running a bit late, so it was pretty dark when they stopped by. Let me tell you, it was adorable. They really go all out for this, and you can tell how happy it makes the kids and the adults. It's all the and fire equipment, trucks, lights, sirens, all of it. Santa and Mrs. Claus ride in the sleigh, and the Grinch is hanging off one of the fire trucks. We were supposed to be a drive by location, but since traffic was backed up on US 1, they stopped and visited with the kids and handed out candy. A thought this was all excellent. Mrs. Claus came over to us just to pet Radar. We all know he's the real celebrity here. I have a video of some of it, but I have muted it because it's extremely loud and nobody needs that. I also edited it to skew blue because everything is very red from the emergency equipment. I'm so glad we came out to see it because it was pretty special. 10 points to the City of Marathon, no notes. Day 6, Christmas Day in Paradise. Thursday, December 25th, 2025. Santa visited overnight and left each of the boys a present and filled the stockings with candy and other small things. Radar got a new chew bone. Much like Thanksgiving, I magicked a dinner out of thin air. This time it was ham, macaroni and cheese, apples, rutabaga, green beans, and rolls. Notice the picture of the boys eating Christmas dinner at the picnic table. If you look really close, you can see the neighbor's pedestal and sewer hose over S's shoulder, the previously mentioned trees, and the power pole. You can also see the hammock attached to the truck because we're bougie like that. For scale, that's a 6 foot table and it's up against the RV because I have the toaster oven plugged in and sitting on the bench next to me. It really was that tight, and we did this for 8 days. After dinner, the boys decided to hang out around the camper while Jay and I took our paddleboards out. I hadn't been out in the water yet, so I went the cautious route and wore my wetsuit leggings. It turns out that the water temperature was just fine without them, but boy, am I glad that I had them on. We didn't go out that terribly far and were basically just staying close and wandering around. The water depth was mostly 5 feet or less. In this one area, it was around 2 to 3 feet deep and had a stunning shelf of coral that was populated by a thriving community of urchins and anemones. I didn't realize how shallow it was getting, and I must have been less than a foot of water above the coral. I was standing on the board so I could see down in the water. Suddenly, my rear fin caught the coral and stopped moving forward. However, I did not stop moving forward and ended up straight down in the water on my rear end. Had I not had the neoprene leggings on, I would have been shredded. I managed to get out of the whole ordeal with only a cut on the palm of my hand that I must have used to try to catch myself. My pride was the much larger injury. Since we were just paddling around, I didn't take any of the fancy cameras out and I didn't take any pictures with my phone either. Jay managed to get a couple of me paddleboarding before I fell off. We explored a bit more and then headed back to the campground. By that time, the boys had gotten the snorkeling equipment out, and the younger two were snorkeling in the swimming area next to the campground. S was sitting on the seawall with Radar, who was very excited when we paddled up to him. The rest of the day, we just hung out and snacked and relaxed. Not a bad Christmas day, if I have anything to say about it. Day 7, Key West Side Quest. Friday, December 26, 2025. We had decided the night before that we would head down to Key West the next morning. We also decided that since we had one overly attentive neighbor, not complaining, he was super nice, that we would take Radar with us since we didn't know how long we would be gone or if Radar would be a barking mess or not. We slept in a bit and then headed south. Boys loved the scenery along the way, especially the Flagler Railroad Bridge and, of course, the 7 Mile Bridge. I suggested we just stop the car on one of the islands and go swimming, but nobody thought that was a good idea except for me. We'd planned on parking near Mallory Square, but downtown was packed. I know there was at least one cruise ship in port, but that should not have affected the parking. Since the truck is a little bit hard to park, we ended up paying the expensive parking at the post office. It's a bit of a walk and it is spendy, but the spaces are large and in the shade. We walked around and saw all the things. We went to Mallory Square and took pictures. We shopped a bit. S had forgotten to pack any swimwear whatsoever, so we got a couple pairs of overpriced, crappy swim trunks and a swim shirt for him over the course of a few stops. I'd gotten the idea in my head that my mission was to find a paddleboarding Santa Christmas ornament. It took me a bit, but I found two really good ones. We wandered down Front Street towards Duval and decided we were getting hungry. I looked up dog friendly restaurants, and Island Dogs looked promising, and it was only a couple blocks over. When we got there, we found that the seating looked limited and it was in the direct sunlight, and it was also loud. So we went across the street to investigate Two Friends Patio Restaurant. While I was waiting to ask the hostess if they were dog friendly, over on the sidewalk, somebody gave Jay coupons for free key lime pie at the restaurant. They were indeed dog friendly, and free pie is free pie, so that's where we went. The food and service were great. We got a variety of things, from my fish tacos to burgers to something fancy that S got. They even brought out water for Radar. There were a few other dogs there, but so far as I can tell, Radar was the only dog who had one of the kitchen workers bring him bacon and feed it to him in between belly rubs. And most importantly, the key lime pie was excellent. We spent the rest of the day just doing all the touristy things and got t shirts at Margaritaville. Radar tried to herd the multitudes of chickens, so he had a great time too. We headed back north around 5 and got to watch the sunset during the drive back to Marathon. Day 8, paddleboarding around Grassy Key, Saturday, December 27th, 2025. Saturday was a planned paddleboarding day. We took all the kids and Radar along with all the video equipment. A was excited to try out his new camera. Our middle kid W decided he had had enough fun after about 90 minutes. We had taken the boys north to the lagoon where I'd wiped out on Christmas. There weren't as many sea creatures out on this day. Time of day probably had a lot to do with it too. Since he was done, we paddled back to the campground and he hopped off Jay's board and took Radar back to the camper with him. S had his own board. Jay has a board with a kayak conversion, and I have my dog theme board. The funny thing is that Radar tends to ride with J or S most of the time, depending on who has W. I almost always have A on the front of my board. That's why he's my cameraman. After we dropped off W and Radar, we headed south. We explored the other campground, the marina, and the dolphin center from the water. We then just wandered around from there. We saw several sea turtles, an octopus, teeny crabs, a couple nurse sharks, and a ton of fish. We'd been out quite a while at this point, and A was getting tired. How he's tired from being ferried around the ocean is anyone's guess. You can see how over it he is in the picture. So I put the Pirates of the Caribbean music on my phone while we paddled back. He enjoyed that a lot. My husband said we were ridiculous. When we took A back, Jay said he was done too, so S and I explored under and around the dock until Jay came back with the truck to take the boards back to the campsite. Day 8, Islamorada Side Quest, Snorkeling Alligator Reef with Island Adventures, Sunday, December 28th, 2025. We'd been spending most evenings sitting outside around our fire pit and enjoying the weather, scenery, and company. We'd been discussing taking a snorkeling tour off and on, and we were running out of time. It was already Saturday at this point, and we were leaving Tuesday morning. I had wanted to do Sombrero Reef, but since we had procrastinated, tours were pretty booked or cost prohibitive. Also, since we still had the overly attentive neighbor, Radar was a factor. I'd previously talked to the awesome people at the Jolly Roger office, and they offered many suggestions, but they were either booked or we couldn't take Radar. Let me clarify, we're not usually that kind of dog family. We don't usually take him everywhere. Yes, we take him on trips, but we do typically leave him in the camper while we go do things. I just wasn't sure if he was going to bark a lot so close to other campsites, and I didn't want him to bother other people. I had done the math for snorkeling trips for 5 people, and the costs added up pretty quickly. We've experienced this on other trips. It's almost always cheaper to get a private charter and go out that way. In fact, there's a company in Panama City Beach we've used 3 or 4 times because it's such a great experience and it's very cost effective. So I started looking for private charters. Most of the time they take around 6 people, so it works out well for us. I saw many different companies and price points, but kept coming back to one called Island Adventures that did Alligator Reef up in Islamorada. Their page said they were dog friendly, and they have several different options available so you can customize your trip to suit your needs and budget. Bonus points since you could book everything online. They had great availability for our remaining 2 days, and so this was looking excellent. After some discussion, we decided that the next day, Sunday, would be the best day because the weather was supposed to be great, and it would give Jay a day in between to rest before the long drive north. We were able to book a 4-hour tour starting at 1 p.m. the next day since the morning was already booked. I made sure to note that we'd have 2 adults, 2 teens, 1 adolescent, and 1 corgi, and please let me know if that wasn't okay. Turns out it was absolutely perfect. I was so grateful that we were able to book the tour for our crew on such a short notice, and I'm so glad we did. I think that if we had waited until Monday, Radar wouldn't have gotten to meet Tina. Sunday, around lunchtime, we piled in the truck and headed north to Islamorada. We got to Safe Harbor Angler House and Marina a few minutes early, so the boys played air hockey while I took pictures and Jay walked Radar. Jim was our captain, and he had help today. I guess you could call her first mate Tina. We were underway quickly and headed out toward the Alligator Reef Lighthouse that sits 4 miles offshore for some excellent snorkeling. Captain Jim pointed out wildlife along the way, which I always appreciate. The lighthouse is not named after the animal, but rather the USS Alligator, which ran aground there in 1821. The lighthouse was completed in 1873 to mark the reef in its shallow waters. They deactivated the lighthouse in 2015 and it fell into disrepair. In 2023, the lighthouse was awarded by the National Park Service to Friends of the Pool, a local nonprofit who is currently making efforts to restore and preserve Alligator Reef Lighthouse. In the meantime, the lighthouse and reef remains an extremely popular diving and snorkeling destination. You can expect to find abundant tropical fish like parrotfish, angelfish, triggerfish, grouper, snapper, and barracuda, as well as lobsters, sea turtles, stingrays, queen conch, and even nurse sharks and moray eels. We definitely saw plenty of barracuda and nurse sharks as seen in the video. According to researchers, there are 632 known species of sea life at this reef as of 2020. Jim and Tina at Island Adventures were well prepared for the trip. The boat was clean and well maintained. They had plenty of equipment available like snorkel gear, swim noodles, and a swim mat. We had brought our own snorkel gear since we were unsure if they would have small gear for the kids. It was so awesome when one of W's fins broke, so I gave him mine since we have roughly the same size shoe size. I was able to get a set of their gear, which consisted of mask, snorkel, and fins, and it was good quality and very well maintained. Some places don't do that, and it's a miserable experience. Not here. All their stuff was great. They'd put the swim mat in the water, which gave us a place to come back and rest, which was well thought out and very nice to have. Despite our best efforts, Radar is not a water dog. He tolerates the paddleboards, but do not ask him to actually get in the water. His butt floats and tips his head down into the water, and he hates water in his ears. That's where he wears the life jacket. It keeps his head above water if he needs to swim. He does love a good boat ride, though, and he was here for it today. Tina is the owner of the Salty Shutter, so she was taking pictures of all our adventures the whole time. She got some really great shots. When Tina wasn't taking pictures of us mere humans, she was becoming BFFs with Radar. I have never seen him take to someone so fast. I mean, he loves attention, but he let her baby him, and he doesn't even let me do that. He is a strong, independent corgi, thank you very much. By the end of the 4 hours, I was fairly certain that Radar wanted to go home with Tina instead of us. It was wild. And as great as the pictures of the humans were, the Radar pics were the best. To be fair, he is more photogenic than we are. After A got tired, he handed me his camera to get more video. During one of my last trips around the lighthouse, I switched from A's camera to my cell phone. I always purchase phones that are decently waterproof because I always have it on me when I'm paddleboarding. I usually have my swim capri leggings on and it stays very securely in my right pocket. Same spot, always. That way I know where it is if there's an emergency. I can't tell you the amount of times I've forgotten my phone was in my pocket and I wore it swimming. I am definitely a testament to the waterproof abilities of Samsung phones because I usually have them for 3 or more years. After I'd gotten a decent amount of pictures and video, I put the phone in my pocket where it goes. I don't know if it was because it was a new pair but the exact same pants that I normally wear, or because I've lost some weight and my hips are slimmer or what. But a few minutes later, as I was showing S some conch along the seafloor, it popped out of my pocket and went straight down. It's maybe 15 to 20 feet deep, so it's not the end of the world. Now remember, we're snorkeling and actively underwater when I tell you this next part. S says 1 minute we were looking at conch and just doing our thing, and the next thing he knows, he hears me drop the F-bomb 3 times and he looks over and I'm already on the bottom of the ocean getting my phone. He said it was one of the funniest things he's ever seen and he's never seen me move so fast. I have my phone back and all is good, right? Well, it's been 4 weeks and I'm pretty sure the USB port's dead. It works perfectly otherwise. Charges fine on the charging pad, but it doesn't recognize a charging cable, data transfer cable, or my DJI mics that have the dongle. My guess is that since it's only waterproof to a certain depth, that distance was a bit too far, even though it was down there less than 30 seconds. I'm actually not sure what to do. I just got the phone in August. So my big worry was that A was going to drop my phone in the water, and that's why he has his camera. I don't know why I was so worried, considering I managed to do that all on my own. Shortly after that adventure, we packed up and headed over to the Islamorada sandbar. Once over there, Jim and Tina got the swim mat back out, as well as the paddleboard. The older 2 boys took turns on that, while A swam around the area and laid on the swim mat. I went out for a while, but for some reason, even though it was shallow and should have been plenty warm, it was a bit cold for me, so I hopped out and dried off on the boat. The boys played, paddled, and swam, while the adults chatted. Later on, Captain Jim and S got to talking about the military and the Coast Guard, so I know S really enjoyed that since that's his jam. Eventually, it was time to head back to the marina and end our fun trip. All in all, it was an excellent day. I highly recommend booking a trip with Island Adventures. Jim and Tina were great. The equipment and amenities are excellent and the locations can't be beat. We'll definitely book another outing with them when we're back in the area. Day 10. Attempted beach day at Sombrero Beach. Monday, December 29th, 2025. The plan was to spend our last day in the Keys at the beach. Our first choice was Sombrero Beach since it's dog friendly and has a great reputation. Our reasoning was that since it was Monday, it would be less crowded. Boy, were we wrong. A decided he'd like to stay at the camper because his stomach wasn't doing well. This is a normal thing for him, and I knew he'd be miserable in the car the next day, so I let him stay behind. The rest of us headed down towards the beach. We had loaded two of the paddleboards in the back of the truck just in case anyone wanted to go for a paddle while we were on the Atlantic side. We get over to Sombrero Beach, and oh my word, was it crowded. Actually, that doesn't begin to describe it. I have lived near beaches a fair amount of my life, and I have never seen anything like this. We were there almost 45 minutes, and that was just to go where we could turn around so we could leave. There was absolutely no parking, and it looked like a place that I did not want to be. While Jay was trying to escape the madness, I Googled alternatives. I came up with two likely contenders: Cocoa Plum Beach and Oceanfront Park. We decided we'd go by Oceanfront Park first because it was the first of the two we came to as we were heading back north. Bonus points because there was a large dog park and a kayak launch. The park is easy to get to, but it's behind the Marathon Municipal Building. Google Maps is not great about telling you that when giving you turn by turn directions. The park is located at 9805 Overseas Highway, Marathon, Florida 33050. But make sure you turn into the parking lot behind the Muni building and don't go straight into the dead end. We get back there and it's completely empty. Literally, there's nobody there. There's no beach there, but it has plenty of water access, the aforementioned kayak launch, and a boardwalk. J and W decided they were going to walk the boardwalk with Radar and take him to the dog park. S and I were going to go out on a quick paddleboard run. While we were unloading the boards, a couple workers stopped by to have picnic lunch. They said they were surprised to see us here because nobody comes to their beach, especially tourists. I explained to them that we really liked their beach and it was totally our vibe, and they said that we were cool and they would let us stay. Very funny. The kayak launch was excellent. We had a good paddle and saw what we think were dolphins. W played on the workout equipment and chased iguanas with Radar. After 90 minutes or so, we headed back to Jolly Roger since we had a lot to get ready before we left in the morning. It was a nice, relaxing day, and I couldn't have asked for better. Day 11, on the road again, travel day to Margaritaville, Sunday, December 30th, 2025. I'm not exaggerating when I say we were all really sad to leave the Keys. We expected to have a good time, but this was exceptional. The weird thing is I can't say we really did anything different than usual, but it was special. After saying goodbye to our new friends, we started the drive north. Although it was only a little over 300 miles, it looked like it would take every bit of 6.5 hours to get there. I'm pretty sure it was closer to 7 when it was all said and done. Nothing of note to share. There's just not a good way to get from Marathon to Auburndale, and it's a lot of small towns and red lights with traffic. We got there around 4 and got to our site. I'll explain more about check in and the resort on the next slide. The standard back in site was easily 3 times bigger than what we'd been living in for the past week, and I don't think we knew what to do with it. I kept rearranging the chairs because it looked so empty. Setup was easy but miserable because while we were driving north, a big cold front was sliding south. Where we'd started our days in the mid 70s and the previous days had been in the mid 80s, Margaritaville was in the lower 50s and that wind was cold. I'm in a t shirt trying to get everything level so I can open up the camper and get a hoodie. Everything was good to go, and my dad was supposed to stop by and visit later that evening, so I did the only rational thing and started making a pot of chili. While unpacking, we discovered that there is a very strict burn ban in that county, and we're not allowed to have any open flame, including our little propane fire pit. How am I supposed to survive this torture without a way to keep warm? Jay even went to the reception desk to verify because sometimes those small propane ones are allowed. Nope, words were absolutely not. It was miserable outside, and having a visitor inside our little camper didn't really sound like fun. So J and S headed over to the Home Depot to buy a space heater that was suitable for the outdoors. I was firmly on team ask for forgiveness, not permission, but Jay was not having any of that nonsense. The resort sent out several texts over the next few days with friendly reminders about the fire pits, but nobody was ever stopped. We ended up having a nice, albeit chilly meal and visit with my dad. The space heater was putting up a valiant effort. After he left, we discovered the dog park was not exactly where it was noted on the resort map, but that it was actually closer and next to the laundry facilities. The laundry was paid by app or tap to pay and was only $2 per washer and dryer, so it was like a BOGO sale compared to the laundry at Jolly Roger. So naturally, we did what anybody would do on New Year's Eve in Margaritaville. We hit up the dog park and then did laundry until 1 a.m. Camp Margaritaville RV Resort and Cabana Cabins, Auburndale, Florida. Camp Margaritaville Auburndale is a family friendly RV and cabin resort located in Central Florida between Orlando and Tampa. It's also close to Legoland. It sits on 66 acres and is not too far off of I 4 next to Lake Myrtle in Auburndale. RV check in is at 2 p.m. and checkout is at 11 a.m. They have two heated resort pools and one 147-foot water slide. That's total length of the water slide, not the height. They have one splash pad, several playgrounds, pier, Parrot Island mini golf. They have several places to play pickleball, volleyball, and basketball, and so much more. They have 75 cabana cabins, and some sleep up to 6 people. They also have 326 RV sites. Their pull through sites are 90 feet by 35 feet on pavement, and the back end sites, which we had, were 80 feet by 35 feet on crushed shell. They offer full hookups, as well as 50, 30, and 20 amp breakers. They also provide free Wi Fi and cable. Check in. Check in at the gate was easy and quick. They had someone escort us to our site in short order. I'm so glad they have escorts because this place is massive and I'd hate to be lost in there pulling a camper. Somehow, we ended up with a really great spot. It was close to all of the activity at the main pool, but it was around the corner, so it was a little more secluded. I couldn't have asked for better. It was so convenient to everything. We were in a standard back in site, but it felt so big compared to what we had in Marathon. It was a wide parking pad of crushed shells next to a pad made of decorative pavers. This is where the picnic table was located. Next to that was an astroturf area. Surrounding our area was a bunch of decorative plants and several tall palm trees. The permanent grill was located to the back of the area, right as the pavers ended. We've stayed at several RV resorts over the past few months, and this was by far the biggest, nicest spot we've had, including the ones where we stayed in upgraded sites. Capacity. As mentioned previously, Camp Margaritaville at Auburndale has 75 cabana cabins and 326 RV sites for a capacity of 401 families. We were booked from December 30th to January 3rd. I got an email in early December letting us know that December 30th, 31st, and January 1st were either at or near capacity, and that guests of campers would not be allowed on those dates. During these dates, only registered guests listed on your reservation would be permitted on the property. If you needed to add someone to your reservation, then you needed to email them at a certain address and let them know. Since I knew Dad would be visiting, I followed the directions and got him added. The process was very easy and the interaction with staff was excellent. I have to say, you could not tell it had that many people. It's so big and so spread out that it's not overwhelming at all. Sure, there are a lot of people everywhere, but you could still get a spot at the bar or join in the activities. A cold front had come through as we were driving in, and the high temperatures were in the upper 50s, lower 60s those days, so I feel like saying there was plenty of extra chairs around the pool might be a bit disingenuous. I don't know if it's standard procedure because there were so many people or because it was leading up to New Year's Eve, but they had a police officer stationed at the roundabout just off the main pool area from dusk until about midnight every night we were there. The only issue I really had with it is that they ran their lights the whole time and it got annoying after a while since our lot was right there. But it wasn't the biggest issue and we couldn't see it inside the camper. I suppose you could say the only place where you knew there was a lot of people is when it came to the food, which leads me to food and drinks. We were excited to see that there was online ordering of food on the app and even campsite service was available. We usually cook at our campsite, but I had been cooking a lot of meals and we had done the last 2 holidays camping, so I was ready for a few breaks. I understand that the resort was at capacity, but the food service was horrible, repeatedly. Our first attempt was at the Feeding Frenzy. It's the main eatery for the resort and it's next to the main pool. It's combined with Frank and Lola's, which is their pizza place. We were third in line and told the food would take about 40 minutes. We knew the park was fairly packed and that we probably couldn't see a lot of the orders since online ordering was available, so 40 minutes seemed reasonable. We nicely inquired about our food after an hour, only to be snapped at by that staff member. I think that might have been the only bad staff interaction we had while we were there. Slightly under 2 hours later, we finally got our food. The family ahead of us had gotten half of their food about the same time, so it wasn't just us. We sat down to eat, and we all agreed that the food was incredibly unremarkable. I'm not sure how it's possible to have fish tacos with pineapple pico and cojito cheese and still have no flavor. It also tasted like it'd been sitting under a heat lamp for a while. S had basically the same impression about his food. He'd ordered the Hawaiian burger, and it looked amazing. Again, it had teriyaki sauce and pineapple on it, but no flavor. We were less than impressed and made a point not to eat at the resort the remainder of our stay. The next evening, in the spirit of not ordering any more meals at the resort, we decided that we'd like ice cream for dinner. So we wandered over to the Dreamsicle ice cream shop, thinking it would be hard to mess that up. We were wrong. The flavors of ice cream that they carry and are available as scoops are as follows: vanilla chocolate, scooper hero, cookies and cream, cookie dough, and espresso chocolate chip. From there, they have several options from sundaes to boozy milkshakes that are built on those flavors. When we got it to order, the guy at the register sadly informed us that they were out of vanilla, chocolate, and cookie dough, and that everything else is based on those flavors, but we were free to substitute in Scooper Hero or espresso chocolate chip. He explained that Scooper Hero was basically vanilla, but with yellow and red food dye. I'm not entirely sure that was the case, but I never tasted it. A and I got scoops of cookies and cream, and the other three got sundaes with Scooper Hero subbed in. Apparently, the sundaes were not great because nobody finished them. On our last day there, it finally warmed up enough for the kids to swim in the heated pool. While S stayed with the littles, Jay and I walked over to the tiki bar and got cocktails for us and a mocktail for S. The mocktail was by far the best. My rum runner tasted like lighter fluid even after I mixed it more. After I added some S's pina colada, it was tolerable. Jay's 5 o'clock somewhere was okay. I thought about being generous and chalking the long wait times and running out of ice cream flavors to the resort being at or near capacity. But when I thought about it, I got the email about them being at capacity on December 13th. It most likely isn't the first time they've had this happen and have had ample time to plan accordingly. They've been open 4 years, they're not new. Also, we'd ended up talking to some other guests who've stayed there several times and were told that this is pretty standard and had nothing to do with the volume of people. So basically, every food and beverage we got there was a miss. Pro tip: there's a Chinese food place about 2 miles away from the resort on Berkeley Road called Freddy's Cafe. The food is solid, the portions are good, and it's affordable. Barkaritaville. I should not be this entertained by dog parks, yet here we are. There are 3 dog parks that I'm aware of. There may well be more hidden in the resort because I really could have used another day just to explore the place. The 2 main dog parks are near the main pool. The larger of the two is at what I'm going to call ground level behind a row of cabana cabins. If you look at the map, it's directly behind cabins 394 to 396, which I believe are dog specific cabins. This dog park is large and has natural grass. If you turn left at the gate to this area, instead of going in the dog park, you'll see a set of stairs that lead to a side entrance to the main pool area. Go up the stairs, go through the gate, and turn right. The laundry facilities for that half of the park are in the end of that building there. If you go down the side of that building, you're now above the first dog park. At the end of the path, there's a double dog wash station. It looked very nice, but we did not partake. To the left of the dog wash is another gate, and that takes you to the smaller dog park. It's astroturf and smaller, but it's super cute. Both dog parks had a waste station and doggy water fountains. The third dog park is on the far end of the resort over by sites 343 and 344. If you're not looking for it, you'll miss it. I did ride my scooter past there when we first arrived, but I never got a chance to go back. Camp Margaritaville might just be the most outwardly dog friendly place we've been. Yes, even more dog friendly than Great Escapes, which is super dog friendly. According to the map, there's yet another dog park on the other side of the buddy sites, but I can't verify that. Radar really liked the big grass dog park below the pool area, and it was mere steps from our site, so we went there the most. Laundry. The resort had 2 laundry areas, one by the main pool and one over in the middle of the pull through sites, which can be a little tricky to find at night, but it's also the bathhouse for that area, so I'm sure if you need it, you'll find it. We ended up using the one closer to us by the pool, but both buildings have 4 washers and 4 dryers. If you download the app, you can select both sites to see which machines are available or unavailable, as well as how long is left on the machines in use. I'm assuming it's also the same in the other laundry house, but there were 3 regular washers that were $2 a load and a large capacity machine that was $2.25 a load. I may be off by a quarter on those prices because I've since deleted the app and I have the memory of a goldfish. You can either preload the app or use tap to pay with your phone or credit card. I preloaded the app with some money but needed one more load to go in a dryer, so I used tap to pay for that, and both methods worked great. I did feel that the normal capacity machines cleaned our clothes better than the higher capacity machine, and I used the same settings for both. Also, I have been at places where I felt the laundry wasn't as clean as I would have hoped. I was happy with the quality of all the washes I did there, which I think ended up being 6 loads a wash and 4 dryers worth since we hang a lot of our shirts and hoodies. Both facilities were extremely cleaned and well maintained. I appreciated them not overcharging for laundry like some campgrounds do. If I had any suggestions, it would be to have more than 4 machines per facility because those places stayed busy the whole time we were there. Also, the automatic motion lights are tiresome when you're sitting there at night scrolling on your phone while your towel's dry and the light keeps turning off on you. Common areas. This place was immaculately maintained. It's like Disney level maintained. You never saw trash anywhere blowing around. The bathrooms were spotless, no lint on the laundry room floor, nothing sticky in the eating areas, etc. A rig would leave out in the morning, and about 10 minutes later, a little gator with a trailer would pull up. 4 guys would get out and reset the site back to pristine condition in under 5 minutes, complete with spraying down the picnic tables with cleaner and wiping it down. There was curbside trash collection, and the guys would come around several times and collect it. So I say all that to say that the common areas were stunning. Everything was incredibly well maintained. The landscaping was beautiful. There were so many kids and bikes and scooters and golf carts, and it really was just so orderly. Several nights there was a popcorn bar during the kids' activity, and there was zero proof it had been there after the activity had concluded. Someone didn't pick up after their large dog in the dog park one time, and by the time I'd gone back past a few minutes later, it was gone. They are on their cleanliness game here. On our final day there, it was barely warm enough for our kids to enjoy the heated pool and water slide, but they were here for it. It was nice, clean, and well maintained. The slide was fine, but nothing special. I'd really like to see them add a few more water activities or a lazy river or something and just make it amazing. Rule enforcement. I mentioned before that it was fairly chilly while we were there. First 2 nights were in the upper 30s with a breeze, and it was pretty miserable to be outside. You can only have propane fire pits at this resort, and this was also the case at our previous place, so we had purchased one for this trip. We learned upon arrival that there was a very strict burn ban in that county due to the drought, and you could not use even the propane fire pits. We did go ask the reception staff that there had been any changes to the ban, since one, it had rained the night before, and two, because it was so freaking cold. We were told that there had been no changes to the ban and we could absolutely not use the fire pit that we had specifically purchased to use at this and one other location. Now, I completely understand that this is 100% out of the resort's control. That's not even what I'm talking about. What I'm mad about is all the other people around us using the same exact type of fire pits. I rode my scooter through the park and many people were using those fire pits. One family was using theirs in the site that was next to where the police officer was sitting in his cruiser. I'm totally down if we're not enforcing the rules or if the staff happens to look the other way. But don't sit there and tell me absolutely not, and then I get to freeze my buns off while everyone else gets to use theirs. So now I have an outdoor space heater and a fire pit I haul around from campsite to campsite because that's how I roll. Bougie. I feel like I need to give people the heads up about this, not because it matters or is in any way important, but knowledge is power, folks. We've stayed at many different types of campgrounds. We've stayed at state parks, county parks, KOAs, Thousand Trails, and some very nice resorts. We've hit a lot of price points. I will say, I do think that although Camp Margaritaville is a good bit of money per night for a standard site, it hasn't been the most expensive place we stayed, and it does provide a good value. By a good bit. Looking at you, Splash. But it is the first place we've ever been where we looked like we were poors. Usually, when we stay somewhere, you see a huge spread of RV and camper types. You'll see a 44-foot blinged out toy hauler parked next to a 16-foot stick and tin and nobody bats an eye. We have a very nicely maintained, basic, newer, just under 30-foot stick and tin grand design. It's not high end, it's not low end. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. I know we were the only stick and tin on our row, and I'm not entirely sure there were very many others. We were parked surrounded by a very large vintage Airstream and two DRVs. Across from us were two Brinkley toy haulers, and down from them were some incredibly nice Class A's and Super C's. Of course, there was some turnover during the days we were there, so this changed occasionally. You would look down the row of RVs, and there was our tiny little stick and tin sitting there like a 2-year-old at an adults only party. I'm not saying we felt bad or anything because I know nobody cares, but it was so funny. We did take several walks to go do a lot of window shopping. Overall, we had a great time at Camp Margaritaville. We are already planning on going back later in the year and having my dad rent one of the cabanas so we can all hang out some more. It's a great location for us to see both of my parents and keep the kids happy as well. Day 12, New Year's Eve, visiting with dad at Camp Margaritaville, Tuesday, December 31st, 2025. This day was a laid back day. My father had returned that morning to spend the day with us. We explored some of the resort and decided to have a nice meal. This is where the 2 hour wait for mediocre food happened. It's not so much that it took so long or whatever, but that it pretty much took up the bulk of our day and our visit. We hadn't even gone over to eat until after 1, and dad wanted to get back to his hotel before it got dark. So the whole visit was basically waiting on our food to arrive and then going back to our campsite to open Christmas presents, and that was it. We tried to convince him to stay for the New Year's Eve events, but I understand why he didn't want to stay. Camp Margaritaville had a ton of events that were both family friendly and not kid friendly, and were holding them at two separate pool areas, which I thought was pretty clever. All of the family friendly events were at the pool next to where our site was, so we could hear the music pretty much all evening. I walked Radar over to the party around 10 and then took him to the dog park. I decided that since we could hear everything at our site, we would just do everything there and stay around our trusty little space heater. I had brought champagne for us and sparkling grape juice for the kids, so we did the countdown at midnight, party adjacent, which was about the perfect way for us to welcome 2026. Day 13, New Year's Day. Side quest to Dunnellon to visit mom. Thursday, January 1st, 2026. Dad stopped by early in the day for a cup of coffee before he headed all the way back home. After a quick chat, we hopped in the truck and drove the 2 hours to my mom's house in Dunnellon, Florida. I put up pictures of our trip to Rainbow Springs this past October because the only pictures I took on this trip had all my people in them, and we're respecting privacy here. On the way to her house, we popped by Publix and picked up some fried chicken, pub subs, and sides for a nice lunch. We had a great visit and headed back to Auburndale around sunset. We got hungry again around 8 p.m., so that's when we decided to have ice cream for dinner. And well, you already know how that went. Day 14, last day in Margaritaville, Friday, January 2nd, 2026. On Friday, January 2nd, it finally warmed back up into the 70s, so the boys wanted to try out the heated pools. The boys went swimming and we took Radar to the dog park, occasionally checking in. Then we went over to the tiki bar to get subpar drinks. The boys swam some more, and then we all went back to the camper to have lunch and hang stuff up to dry, since the next day was a travel day. We spent the rest of the afternoon just hanging out and doing random things. W rode my electric scooter around the resort while S and I went and explored the license to chill pool area and the dock on the lake and took a bunch of pictures while J and A held down chairs by the RV. We also walked over to the gift shop and camp store. I was super excited to get some Camp Margaritaville teas and stuff. Much to my disappointment, the only name drop gear were Christmas and New Year's themed. I have a great collection of Margaritaville location shirts that I've been working on for years, and they didn't have anything I would wear in my size. The one shirt I really liked came in either an adult small or 3X and nothing else. I did end up with a generic Margaritaville sweater, albeit one size too big, because that's what they had. I talked to who I think might have been the store manager at a minimum because she was in the store every single time we'd gone in there. She said that she had been having the worst time getting her hands on name drop merchandise and that it's all been generic. She thought that if customers are saying something, maybe it will get better soon. I think it may have something to do with the importing the merchandise. And if it's just Margaritaville branded, they can use it at several locations, not just one. Still a bit disappointing though. Towards the end of the day, we began the process of cleaning up the site and breaking things down, and then we headed for bed. Days 15 and 16, traveling home. Saturday, January 3rd, and Sunday, January 4th, 2026. Saturday was a normal travel day. We were up again before sunrise so we could get going. We were looking at a shorter day at about 5 hours and 320 miles. We stopped at a rest area somewhere around lunchtime, and I cannot remember if it was on I 75 or shortly after we got on I 10. We stopped and had sandwiches and leftovers. Radar made yet another friend with the lady in the Class A parked next to us who looked like they were having lunch as well. Rain started after that. There sure was a lot of it, but we felt that we'd had such great weather for the large majority of our trip that we shouldn't complain. Even when it was cold, it was sunny. Looking at the weather radar, the later we were, the better chance we had that we wouldn't be setting up in the rain. However, we had some side quests at my in law's house that would be a lot better done during daylight. We got to Three Rivers just after the 3 o'clock Central check in time. There were maybe 3 or 4 sites to choose from when I booked at the beginning of December, so I wasn't terribly surprised when I saw the sign saying camping full, no availability. I think I chose the only one that was not an ADA site. Even though I do prefer them, I try to leave them for people who may need them more than we do, even though we technically qualify with W's placard. Not that those are even required to get an ADA site. Boy, did I regret that decision. It had stopped raining about 20 minutes earlier. About the time I got out of the truck to help Jay back in, it started to drizzle again. After I'd gotten the camper level and while I was putting the wheel chocks down, the sky opened up with a thunderstorm that actually scored a tornado warning by the time it got to Tallahassee. But at this time, it was mostly torrential rain with occasional lightning and booming thunder. I had packed rain gear in the camper, so as soon as we were secure, I ran in and grabbed it for Jay and S. I was already drenched, so I had the littles run into the camper while I got Radar and carried him from the truck to the RV. So much water had already come down that he would be up to his belly, and nobody would be happy about that. While I was doing that, Jay and S did what they could to get power, propane, and water going so I could cook dinner. I'd offered to cook and bring dinner to my in laws prior, and we were still chasing daylight. We were at Site 26, and I can't say I recommend it. Had I chosen to take one of the ADA sites, we'd at least had been on a concrete pad instead of gravel that was actively flooding. While I cooked dinner, the rain stopped. Jay and S got the truck bed emptied out, which had been holding my scooter, the paddle boards, all the gear, and all the rest of it. When all that was done, we headed over to my in laws, had a good dinner, and a nice visit. We had about 30 minutes of good daylight left, so it was time to get a four wheeler. My father in law was letting us borrow their four wheeler so we could use it to get some things done down at the lake lot. However, we didn't have a great way to get said four wheeler into the bed of the truck. We eventually managed to get it where it needed to be, and even better, nobody got injured. Shortly after, we headed back to the campground. Upon arrival, we were relieved to see that the water had mostly gone down and there were really just some inconvenient puddles. Once inside, we quickly realized that we were no longer level and that we had most definitely shifted under all the water. Ultimately, it wasn't horrible and we didn't care. We were tired. Sunday. We really couldn't tell if it was going to be a big travel day or not. So we did our best to be on the road by 8 a.m. because I 65 is the worst when it's a busy travel day. After getting all the things that were previously in the bed of the truck stored in our bedroom inside the RV, we headed to the dump station and I think we got out of there around 8:30. Not on time, but not bad either. It turned out we must have hit it just right because the 350-mile trip went by quickly with little traffic. We stopped for gas in Montgomery with the intention of pulling over in the parking lot afterwards and having sandwiches. But the few truck parking spots were full and they had a ton of signs saying, "Don't park along the curb." So we just kept going. We ended up not stopping at all until we got home. We pulled in the driveway, had a snack, and started unloading the camper. When that was done, we disconnected and the boys got the four wheeler out of the truck, using actual ramps this time. Our winter trip by the numbers. Since my last video was all about the money we saved by taking the camper this year instead of staying in hotels and vacation rentals, I thought I'd give you the numbers for this trip specifically since it was by far the longest trip and a sizable portion of that 6 month total. All prices include taxes and any additional fees we had to pay. We spent one night on each end of the trip at Three Rivers State Park, making it a total of $65.15 or $32.58 a night. 2 nights at Fort DeSoto cost $109.77 or $54.89 per night. Jolly Roger was a freaking bargain when you consider not only is it peak season, but we also stayed on a holiday week. There were no upcharges for the holiday, just in season weekly rate plus a day. It came in at a total of $966.19 for 7 nights with decent water access, or $138.03 per night. I think we priced a few hotels and rentals, and we easily would have paid upwards of $500 a night. Camp Margaritaville was $159.38 per night for a total of $637.53 for 4 nights. Yes, we paid more per night for Camp Margaritaville than we did in the Keys. I figure we made up a bunch of difference in laundry fees alone, though. I'm kidding, but you get what I mean. We still paid less at Margaritaville by about $100 a night than Splash. And I liked Margaritaville way more. I think the kids like Splash better, but the weather was warmer, so I don't know if that's a fair comparison. Total lodging costs totaled $1,778.64 for 16 days and 15 nights, making it an average nightly rate of $118.58. I'm not mad about it, not even a little bit. We spent $633.40 in diesel and DEF for the truck. I don't have a good way to break out of that what was towing or not, but I can get somewhat close. We had roughly 2,033 miles of towing, and by my best guess, we drove about 2,500 miles total. You can do the math from there if you want to. We paid $679.39 for additional activities over the entire trip. The entire 16-day trip totaled $3,091.43 when everything was said and done. I'm not including meals because we would have spent that money at home as well. For all the things we did and all the places we went, I think we did pretty good. Conclusion and wrap up. So there it is, 16 days of traveling and about the same amount of time to put this video together. Seriously, I did not expect this to be so massive, but I really wanted to present it as one video instead of having two multi-part series going on at the same time. It would probably be better for the algorithm if I did that, but I think I'd lose some of the magic if I broke it up, and I hope I conveyed it appropriately. That being said, at a minimum, I will break the individual campsite reviews out into their own videos so that they're searchable. And I feel like the Wendy story might need to be a short. We'll see. Anyway, the kids have been sad to come back home to the routine and the cold. It really was an amazing trip. The weather was in the 80s every day we were in the Keys, and it's been so cold in Alabama since we've been back. A has been coming up with increasingly creative ways to be able to chuck it all and escape back to Jolly Roger. I keep telling him he needs more than a 5th grade education, but he remains unconvinced. I think we've pretty much decided we're going to go back down for round 2 over the summer. I know the weather and the bugs will be insane, but honestly, it'll be the same here, so at least we'll have better water. Besides, as of right now, a spring break trip is looking really iffy. Not to mention that S starts college away from home in the fall, and it's not a guarantee that his schedule will match up with the little's school schedule next year. If we don't go back this summer, I don't know that it'll happen at all. There's a high likelihood that everything changes for us come May. S graduates, W leaves middle school to go to high school, and A formally ushers us out of the elementary school that we have had a kid at every single year since 2012. I have no plans to stop referring to them as the littles and the bigs, though. The only negative of the trip is that we realized that maybe we should have bought something a little bigger as far as the camper goes. But it was definitely the right camper for the time. It's just that our priorities shifted. We haven't made any firm decisions about that because it's a terrible idea financially. We will probably hit up a few of the upcoming RV shows, though, and take a look. That is also a terrible idea, but we would have at least gone to the local one anyway since I love touring RVs, and at $12 a person, it's a cheap date. Oh, another negative is that Radar is sad to be home and has been completely depressed. I am sure he misses Tina terribly. Just wait until he finds out he has an upcoming vet appointment. Back on topic. If this whole thing appealed to you, all I can tell you is take the trip. You will not regret it. I know we still have some of the new camper magic, but I don't have the vocabulary to explain how important this trip ended up being for our family. Take the trip. If you like my ramblings and shenanigans, like and subscribe for more. Share it with your friends. I'm definitely going to need more subscribers if I'm ever going to get monetized, and somebody might have to buy herself a new phone because phone insurance is for smart people. Until next time.